Hello, and welcome back to the Neil Fox Show. My name is Neil Fox. I am your future president. And, of course, I am your current president of time and space. And with me, as always, is my partner in love and in life, Link the Labrador.
Hello, yes, this is the other president of space and time. Yes, they are different, and I am here from the far distant future to give you messages and warnings of the dire future that we are careening to if we do not change course immediately.
Indeed. We have many different things we've been talking about today, but I will let you start us off, Mr. Labrador. What is the first topic you would like to discuss?
Oh, the first topic that we're going to discuss is... Oh, we have talked about so many things. We were just talking about the wonders of naming conventions for businesses. And why on earth would you call it the... I can't even remember what it's called.
It was Heating and Electric Installation Logistics Company. HEIL. Now, friends, it is very important when you are creating an acronym, meaning an abbreviation based on the first letters of words, that you make something like the word radar. Because radar, many people may not know, is actually an abbreviation for a longer series of words.
Yes.
I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, but it's, radio something or other. And it spells the acronym RADAR.
Or NASA.
NASA, National Aeronautics Space Administration.
Or NORAD.
NORAD. Let's see.
NORAD. North American... someone's going to yell at me in the comments, I'm sure.
NORAD. So,
North
as I was saying,
Americans...
Heating and Electric Installation Logistics. HEIL. And so their sign says in giant block text, HEIL. Why would you do that?
Good question. No idea.
Anyway, let's talk about something slightly more important than people not reading their abbreviations before they put them on a billboard.
Correct.
So, let's talk about something that is very important to both of us.
Yes.
There are many things we could discuss, and many things that we will discuss in the future. But one of the things we were discussing is policies based on the road and highway system.
Yes, we have our ideas on policies of the road and the road systems, and one of the big ones is toll roads. If we ever... Floridians, I know that you have approximately a toll road every 100 feet or so in Orlando. It is absurd, and yes, the Easy Pass actually works on all of them, even though they're named different things.
Well, here's the thing. The reason why counties and states put in toll roads is because they are trying to meet a budget quota.
Correct.
So they say, well, if we put in a toll road, and of course these are vendors that come in and do this for them typically. It's not usually, it's the same way with like traffic cameras, for example. The traffic camera company comes into the city and says, well, we can install all these traffic cameras and, for a 50% commission, we'll give you half the money, but, we'll maintain it for half the money.
Correct.
Now, of course, you, city, have to have all the staff and all the people to write the tickets and all that, but, for our very, very expensive proprietary technology, we'll take half the money.
Correct.
And unfortunately, toll roads are often run the same way, where it's, not the state getting all the money, but rather the state getting some of the money.
Really, that one's a little bit fickle. It depends on the state, depends on...
Oh, yeah.
I know in Maine specifically, the toll roads are actually administered by the state, and administered by the, what boils down to the road administration. It has a name.
Maine Department of Transportation. Thank you.
The Maine Department of Transportation actually maintains all the toll booths and everything.
And that is a way that it's done in many states as well. There are as many ways to administer a toll road as there are toll roads, unfortunately.
Correct.
And so, the thing is, many toll roads were created before there was any way to do any type of digital transaction. And so every single toll road that was built before the year, 1980 or whatever, is you stop at a booth and put in coins, or you give cash to a cashier.
Which can lead to many fender benders and or wrecks.
Oh, yeah. Well, and see, here's the thing. They don't care. Because if someone is not paying particular attention and accidentally goes through the toll booth, they get not just a 25-cent, charge. They get to be, go to court and pay $300 to the city. Or $700 plus a prison sentence if they make a mistake, like accidentally clipping part of the toll booth.
Correct.
So, unfortunately, we have, like many places in the United States, what are called perverse incentives. What does perverse incentives mean?
Perverse incentives. A incentive that is generally perverted.
Well, we try not to define words with the same word that defines the word.
I know, my dear.
So,
now I'm going to bat it back to you.
Oh, thank you. I just caught the ball. Thank you. Okay. So, perverse incentives. So, incentives are things like paying people money. Okay?
Correct.
So, paying someone money to a job is an example of an incentive.
Correct.
Giving a child a piece of candy after they've had a meal, not like a giant piece of cake or whatever, but like a piece of candy, is a perfectly reasonable reward for finishing your vegetables.
Correct.
It's not going. Children are very high energy, and so having a slight amount of sugar is not going to hurt them. It's there's lots of different things for different children, and but
we're not going to go into how you parent your children, because if we did, we'd offend approximately 100% of you. Next question.
Correct. So we're just giving an example. A piece of candy for doing a good job or eating your vegetables or whatever is a different type of incentive. Okay? So a perverse incentive, perverse meaning, like you said, perverted, is where the word perverse comes from. So perverse meaning backwards.
Correct.
A backwards incentive. Okay? So, what this means is that if you have an incentive that is causing people to do something that most people would consider to be a bad thing. So, a great example of perverse incentives in just simple terms is if you are paying someone for their time and not for their labor output, the incentive is to simply wait for the clock to run out.
Correct.
There is a reason why there is a very common phrase, which is, boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I poop on company time.
Correct.
Because what are they going to do? Fire you for pooping?
No.
No, of course not. And ironically enough, when that was written, yes, bosses were making around 10 times as much as employees, or owners of companies were making around 10 times as much as employees. Ironically enough, today it should be, boss makes $1, I make 1 cent. And that would be more accurate, but that's a whole different discussion.
We'll work on that later.
So, perverse incentives mean incentives to do bad things, essentially. It's a very, very simplified version, but many of our audience are young or have not been in school for decades, so we're trying to make it as simple as possible. So, incentives to do bad things. So, again, think about the incentives behind stoplight cameras. Or to take a different option, incentives for police officers. Many police officers are given quotas that they have to fill of how many tickets they have to write.
Correct.
And so that teaches the police officer to think of the citizen as a vending machine which to dispense tickets to.
Correct.
Another example is a vice business. Okay, what is a vice business? Give me a few examples.
Alcohol, cigarettes, tobacco.
Correct. Now, children, do not look up this movie. But for those of you who have watched this movie, you will understand exactly what I mean. There's a wonderful movie, exceptionally well made, called Thank You for Smoking. It is an excellent film, and Mr. Labrador, I think we should watch it together tonight, because it has one of my favorite actors in it. The same actor that played Harvey Dent in the Batman movie, the Two-Face character.
I'm trying to remember his name.
I don't remember his name, but you know the face. The guy with the big chin.
Exactly.
Big chin guy.
One of the lines from the movie, and I do remember this line well because it's been parodied to death and it's been talked about to death.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the lines of the movie was, the main character sells cigarettes, and then the main character's son tries a cigarette, and the main character doesn't know what to do, or freaks out. I can't remember which. You know the line better than I do.
It has been a long time since I saw it, so you tell me what you remember.
I remember the main character not knowing how to respond because, one, he knows that it's dangerous, but two, he believes in free will.
Absolutely.
So, which is the right answer?
Right, and so this comes to a very important point that we have talked about many times in this program, and we will continue to talk about many times in this program, because it is incredibly important, especially for understanding the modern world. Okay? Understanding the world basically after 1950, when modern advertising started to happen. Okay?
Yep.
So, democracy is based on the concept of freedom of choice. Okay? You can choose. Do you want the Democratic candidate? Do you want the Republican candidate? Do you want the Libertarian candidate? Do you want the Green Party candidate? Whatever. The concept of democracy is based on freedom of choice. Okay?
Yep.
But here's the thing. What happens when you don't have a choice? Or when your choice is manipulated by something or someone? So this could be a manipulation by advertising. This could be a manipulation by a shady salesman or shady salesperson, whatever. It doesn't have to be male or female. Unfortunately, female salespersons can be very manipulative. So, the point is, what happens in a quote-unquote free society when your choices are being manipulated? Tell me your intuitive thinking, and I will tell you my analytical version.
What happens when your choices are being manipulative? Well,
make sure to speak up, my dear.
I'm thinking of the words that I want to say.
I know, but your voice is not loud enough to be properly heard on the radio.
Yes, my dear.
Thank you.
So, I don't really have a good intuitive definition of being manipulated.
And that is a fascinating thing, because it is, unfortunately, people like myself, who are master salesmen, who know how to manipulate people. And I like to think, because I like to think of myself as a moral person, I like to think of myself as manipulating people to good ends. Okay? So, for example, I was a consultant. That is all manipulation. Every part of the process is manipulation. But the thing is, as we were taught in the class, and as we were taught by the leader of the company, Mr. John Burgess, we are helping people to see a better way to run their business.
Yes.
So, we are, if you were going to define it with clinical terms in psychology, you might call it manipulation. But we're doing things like sitting down with the person and making them look at their spreadsheets and saying, sir, why have you been losing money the last 3 years? Now, yes, that is a form of manipulation, but all it's doing is having them look at the truth. And in my opinion, that is not manipulation. That is similar to a life coach or a sports coach. Because a good sports coach doesn't give everyone a trophy at the end of the game, whether they win or not. A good sports coach looks at the truth and says, well, we failed today. How can we do better? And that is what a good consultant does as well, is looking at the facts and saying, look, your business is failing. Your business is going bankrupt. How do you fix it? But, unfortunately, there are many people in this world who choose to use those powers of manipulation for horrible purposes because of perverse incentives in many cases. So, for example, Thank You for Smoking is all about people who sell cigarettes to children.
Correct.
That's the point of the movie, because for over 150 years, consultants and managers and business people and bankers and everyone else who works for these companies knows that the earlier you get someone hooked on smoking, the more money you make. So that is an example of a horribly perverse incentive. You are getting someone hooked on a habit that about 95% of smokers want to quit. 95%. That is absurd. And the fact is that in a free and open society, we have to allow products that can have negative effects. It would be unreasonable to say, well, we're going to just completely ban cigarettes, completely ban alcohol. We tried prohibition many years ago. Many young people may not remember this very well from their history class, but I guarantee you, if you ask your grandfather, he will know all about it, because he may have lived through it.
Yes, we tried to ban alcohol, and it backfired horribly, only created the mob. Now, we're going to try and ban free speech. It's only going to create what's going on in Europe currently.
Correct. Because Europe has had many very strong laws that have been recently passed that can restrict the freedom of speech. Because most European countries do not have the same freedom of speech protections that we have in the United States.
Correct.
Many European countries have direct censorship laws.
You think France would have figured it out after... you would think France would have figured it out after Maximilien Robespierre decided to essentially pave the roads in blood.
Correct. However, something that I like to come back to, especially when we're on these rather dark and depressing topics, is the fact that the human spirit, the essential nature of human beings, is to be free and to be beautiful.
Wow.
For example, let me give you an example, okay? The X-ray machine was invented in the Soviet Union, from what I remember. Maybe it was invented somewhere else, I don't remember. But the point is, once the X-ray machine started to be used in the Soviet Union, there were many thousands of these X-ray films that were no longer needed. You know, they'd take a picture of the person's, broken leg or broken back or whatever, and they would just throw it in the garbage. It's not needed anymore once you've addressed the patient's need.
Correct.
And people called beatniks, which today we would call hipsters, but it's the same thing. People called beatniks would take these X-ray films, cut them into circles, and then make records out of them.
Of course they would.
And there are some absolutely incredible pictures I will show you when we get home, but there are pictures of, broken legs that look exactly like records.
Of course.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And it is the most macabre thing that you have ever seen. It is the most goth thing that has ever been done.
Now,
it's great.
Getting back to the essential nature of humanity. And here's the crux of the issue.
Absolutely.
Humans crave stability and they crave control. They also, on the flip side of the coin, crave independence and freedom.
And adventure.
And adventure. They crave all four of these things, and all four have to go through cycles of all four have to go through cycles of control equals freedom equals exploration, exploration equals control, and the cycle repeats. So even if we went to Mars 100 years from now, we would have a dictatorship on Mars. That's how it would work.
Let me clarify your statement, because I agree with you, but I want to make sure that the audience understands clearly what you're saying, okay? So, in my opinion, and this is based on my reading of the history, especially of books like Guns, Germs, and Steel, which I highly recommend. This is a book we will read together, by the way, because this book explains so many things that most people have deep philosophical questions about.
Correct.
So, for example, why do we find human beings on every island in the world? It seems ludicrous, especially looking at it from a modern perspective, that someone would have made a canoe and traveled to Hawaii.
Well,
Hawaii, hold on. Hawaii is, people may not have looked at a map recently. Hawaii is so far away from anything. Can you imagine, okay? 500 miles, all right? 500 miles, or for those of you from places that actually think in a logical way, approximately 700 to 900 kilometers. I don't know the exact math in my head, but you get the point. Around 800 kilometers, okay? That is approximately the distance from New York City to Orlando, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That is a long way.
To be randomly rowing in the ocean, yes.
And keep in mind that these people, roughly around 20,000 years ago, we think, it depends on the island, but some were discovered around 10,000 years ago, first inhabited by humans. Some were discovered as early as 100 or even 200,000 years ago, depending on the location. But the point is, I want you to imagine, let's say you start in the Philippines, okay? The Philippines, off the coast of Asia. Or perhaps you start in California, off the coast of America, okay? And you decide to build a boat. As far as we know, these were large canoes, essentially. Not some fancy, clipper ship with fancy cabins. We're talking about a dugout canoe. And they just set off in a direction.
Well,
and hold on. This is incredibly important. The fact that we find this in every culture, in every island on Earth, in every different type of society, whether the American frontier, the Australian frontier, the Asian frontier. Back in the day, this would have been the Mongols going across Asia, for example. Back in the day, this would have been the Chinese or the Egyptians, these empires from many, many, many years ago, exploring and finding new land or new places to conquer. Even around the same time as when China and Egypt were exploring, you had the Greeks doing things like, the great epics of Homer, where, yes, a lot of it is myth, but it is based on truth, where they basically just said, you know what, we're going to get in a ship and we're going to just sail in a direction and see what happens. And in my opinion, based on everything I've read in the scientific literature and based on what I feel in my soul, I think that this type of exploration, this go west, young man, this go and find the next star, Peter Pan, this go and get your family in a covered wagon and set off from St. Louis and see what happens. In my opinion, this is an essential part of the human experience. An essential part of humanity that we have lost. Because I ask you, think about your friends and neighbors, okay? Think about how many of them would be willing or even capable of buying a boat. Not even making their own boat out of a hollowed out tree. Buying a boat and just sailing off in a direction and seeing what happens.
My dear, I'm going to stop you right there.
Absolutely.
I don't think we've lost it at all. I think...
Interesting. Okay.
I personally believe that what you and I are doing right now is the equivalent of what the settlers did, of wandering in a direction and just seeing what happens. Now, we don't... Obviously, we have more technology to work with. We have the technology of our time to work with. Whatever. But the essential nature of oppression, wanting freedom, and then moving forward into exploration is part of everyone's human development. Every single parent has a story of, oh yeah, by the way, I just spent 2 summers and wandered around the country because I could. Every adult has that story. Every parent has that story, and I'd be shocked if they didn't. The uneducated ones that sat around in their town for 30 years or 40 years are very, very boring people to talk to.
Absolutely. And let me point out something important, okay? So, when I say we have lost that, I am specifically talking about the places where I am from, okay? We're talking about Arkansas, Missouri, a couple of other places like Virginia, where I'm from, okay? So, I have traveled to just about every state in the Union. I've been to, I think, 45 different states, okay?
Yes.
I've traveled to most of the state parks, most of the national parks. I've traveled to all of the Great Lakes with my family when I was a child, okay? Because we did this. We went out in an RV and just went traveling. And what do you know? It was some of the best experiences of my childhood, some of the best experiences that my family has ever had. And we were inspired by my grandfather, who did the same thing. And yet, when I say we have lost this, I'm talking about us as a nation.
I think you're wrong.
Hold on. I am responding to what you said. Give me a moment. In my opinion, when you meet someone who is knowledgeable about the world, who is a creative thinker, who is not a drudgery labor person, in most cases, they do have a story like what you're talking about. You know, they went and taught English in Thailand, or they, went to Europe and went backpacking for a year. You know, these types of experiences are formative for people's development. And you'll find that when you speak to someone who has been to a college that's not in their hometown, when you speak to someone who has done one of these stunts, what many people say, that's, trekking across South America with just a backpack, oh, that's so dangerous. You'll catch malaria or whatever. Let people live their lives, please. This bubble mentality of we're going to keep people in the bubble, we're not going to let children play outside, we're going to be afraid of whatever, we're not going to let, this is why we have major pandemics.
Correct.
This is why we have multiple generations of people. In my opinion, I would estimate somewhere like 80% of the population who are exceptionally fragile.
Yes.
So, yes, I agree with you that many people have had these experiences. Obviously, we have not lost we have not lost this essential part of humanity in total. When I say we have lost it, I mean as a mainstream idea. Okay? That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Because what do teachers and counselors tell people to do? They say, well, just study hard, get good grades, go to college, and get a good job. And people, listen to me very, very carefully, especially if you are under the age of 30. That is so wrong for the modern day. That was effective in 1950. It was effective in 1960 and 1970, but approximately since 1980, that has been the wrong way to get a good job. The right way to get a good job is to simply follow what you are passionate about and be so good at it that anyone who sees you, anyone who experiences you doing that work says, you have to work for me because you're that good. I can get a job anywhere because I am that good at sales. You can get a job anywhere because you are that good at construction. Anyone who sees you doing construction goes, oh yeah, he knows exactly what he's doing. And yes, those are skills you cannot learn in school.
Correct.
There are exceptions, like computer engineer, that kind of thing. You can learn those skills in those specific professions. But many people may not know there are options online now where you can get those types of skills without having to go through a 4-year degree.
Correct.
For example, only a few months ago, I met somebody who wanted a new job. And what he did was he simply went online to get Google certificates. Google certificates. Look this up, guys, okay? Look it up on Google or on whatever search engine you prefer. Google career certificates. And you can simply study for the certificate and take the test, and then Google will give you this qualification. And then you can go and get a job in IT, like this guy that I met. Actually, somebody I met while I was in Maine, okay? He didn't go and get an IT degree. He studied for 6 months on his own. And now he has a job making $70,000 a year. After 6 months of self-taught instruction, costing him basically nothing other than room and board while he was studying. That is incredible. And yes, everyone can do this. There are people 80 years old who buy computer courses and do them on paper. There are people 90 years old who get into marathon running. Like, this is possible if you believe that you can do it. And that is what we have lost. We have lost the ability to believe in ourselves. We've lost the ability to believe that, yes, there is a better life over the horizon if we can only reach it with our minds still intact. And that is my soapbox for the day. Is there anything you would like to say before we stop, Mr. Labrador?
No. You've pretty much said everything.
Well, my friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Neil Fox Show. We greatly appreciate your time, and we have a new sponsor. It is DuckDuckGo, a wonderful website that you can use as your search engine of choice on any device that you use. So DuckDuckGo is just, the name of the animal, duck, and then go, G-O. And you can get a private email address the same way that we have from this wonderful sponsor. And we now have this email where you can send any information to us that you like. We are always interested to hear what you have to say. It is Fox, F-O-X, Labs, L-A-B-S, foxlabs at duck.com, D-U-C-K.com. Now, we are available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, so including Spotify, iTunes, and many more. And you can find all of the different places you can listen to the show on Anchor, ANCHOR.FM/Neil Fox Show. And we will look forward to seeing you next time.